my review of Ubuntu MATE, and it's a review of my Ubuntu MATE is what I should say, because I always make some slight customizations and modifications uh, to to my OSs to suit me. Right now, it's installed as a UEFI. Can be installed in BIOS. I've done both. I think I prefer the UEFI. General impressions about Ubuntu Mate is it's quicker than some other versions. It it uses less RAM and resources. As you can see, well, it's using 1.2. Well, yeah, I have the the screencast running and other things. So usually it's more around 800 gigabits of RAM being used, and this is all quite a bit lower in the 2 to 3%. But I'm recording, so that's using some resources. I didn't really run into any flaws during the installation. The installation was very simple, very straightforward. Um, I do the something else because there's 5 Linux distros running on this particular hard drive. So I always gpart it and set it all up myself, and then, but from a new user perspective, and that's how I'm going to rate this when I get towards the end, is I've got like 10 criteria I use to say how new user friendly is something. And it's, if you use the erase all and you use an entire drive, it's extremely easy. I've never done the next to Windows 10, so I can't really rate that. I imagine it's not any different than the others Ubuntu distros. So let's one thing I really like about Ubuntu Mate is this welcome screen when you first get on. And we're going to take a quick look at the getting started, and you go to the updates and you go ahead and check for updates, which is something you should do as soon as you finish installing. And then of course I add all the additional codecs. If it's on a machine with a Blu-ray or a DVD on it, then I add the Blu-ray and DVD playback support. I also add all the additional screensavers and all the additional themes and all the additional community wallpapers. The background you see here is from one of those additional community wallpapers. I always go to drivers, make sure there's no additional drivers. That takes a minute, so I'm not going to bother doing it, but that looks to see if there's anything on your system that is already there. If I haven't mentioned it, if it wasn't obvious, you must be connected to the internet prior to doing this, obviously. And the firmware package is primarily Broadcom drivers. So if you have a Broadcom device and you're having a hard time connecting to the internet because of that, plug it into the internet some other way, add a Wi-Fi adapter. I always like to use this extremely fast Wi-Fi adapter that I have that I'm connected at 5G on. It's a Panda PAU07, and it gives me some really good speeds. And it was, I think, 25 bucks. So I always like that. You can go through and check all this. You're good to go. If you need to, if you have a Wi-Fi adapter in your system, not Wi-Fi, a Bluetooth adapter in your system, and you're having problems, you can do that. If you want to connect to printers on the network, you can do that. Software utilities for peripherals. Again, I don't have any of these, so I didn't install them, but you can go ahead and install all those. Language and input, if you want something else. Optional tasks. You can configure your backups, your network shares. Samba is what is typically used, and that is very easy to set up. The firewall is very easy to set up. I don't have those set up at the moment because this is not really a daily driver. This is just kind of a test one that I'm using, a test OS that I'm using at the moment. And customization, you can customize it, check what the keyboard shortcuts are. System specification. Okay, this one, to my mind, utilities being kind of buried down here. I wish that was more up in the optional tasks, but that's okay. It's down here, and I install all these. The system profiler and benchmark. I believe disk came installed. Gparted, I have that. Disk usage analyzer, that may have also been installed. And system monitor, P sensor, I always install that. Tells me the temperatures on my laptop, or even if you have a desktop, if you have any sensors, and it's easy enough to change to, oh, that's not the one, preferences, and change it to Fahrenheit if that's what you're used to looking at things in, if that makes more sense to you. And there you go. If you need to, say, change the name on something, preferences, this is the ACP, so I'll change its name, ACPI, and we'll say okay. What is that? That must be something from Voco Screen, which is what I'm using. So you can see what I'm typing. That's actually kind of cool, I guess. It's new. I've used Voco Screen before and hadn't noticed that. And so I like this welcome screen, because if you're a new user, you can walk through and put all kinds of the typical updates that you would normally want, like the ability to watch videos and use your DVD player, something you have to do in regular Ubuntu with a command line. Here, it's point and click. Okay, the other thing I like is their software. Now, they've got 3, 4 if you count being able to do it via command line. But this is the software boutique. And this is kind of a different. It does not have, it has a very select boutique, I suppose, list of programs in here. So this is it's a very limited list, and that you can go through and add. So you can add all your various browsers, and it even has Google Chrome. Typically, you have to go get Google Chrome via whatever browser that it comes with, download and install it. Here, it's right there. So this is really nice. Now let's go back to let's go back to this where it says Software Center. So I have it installed already, but so you install the Software Center, which is the full Software Center that you find in all the other Ubuntus, and of course Synaptic Package Manager, which is a very powerful tool. And like it says, it's a graphical package management for APT. So just about anything you can get at with a command line APT install, you can get at through Synaptic Package Manager. So if you know the name and you would type in sudo apt install Synaptic, okay, you wouldn't install Synaptic with Synaptic Package Manager, but you know what I'm saying. And then you can install from there. One of the nice things about this, the boutique, is this bulk queue. So it's similar to Synaptic Package Manager in some sense, in that you go through and you highlight everything you want to install and then apply. Do them all at once. I don't have any, but there'd be a whole list here of all those ones that I did install. So including the inclusion of third-party codecs, the file manager it uses, where is it? This is borderline useless. That's where you get rid of stuff off the plank, by the way. Grab it and drop it. So some you can do remove. And this is plank. I've added plank. This is the plank it adds. It's a little different. One thing that's nice is the plank icon, which allows you to get the preferences, which is not something that all planks include. A lot of times in order to get the preferences, you have to put in a command line plank -- preferences to get at the preferences. So it's kind of nice that that's there. But I'm not. It's not like I'm going to change it that often once it's set up. File manager. That's kind of cool that it's doing that. Caja is the file manager, or Caja. Is it Caja? Is it Spanish? Is it Caja? I don't know. It's a pretty reasonable. It's not, in my mind, quite as good as Nemo, but it's still pretty good. Notice there's no show hidden, so the good old Control H is how you turn hidden on and off. And so that's the file manager, Caja. Very, very, very cool little. I think it's better than Thunar, but not as good as Nemo. But on par with Nautilus. And why am I talking about the name of the file manager? I'm going to show you something real quick. I don't know if it's something that you need to do very often, but sudo Caja. What happened here? My hand must have hit something. Oh yeah, giving away my password. Okay, so Steve as super user. Okay, that's kind of cool. If there are things you need to change as super user with the file manager, rather than using sudo commands and copies to do copies of files from into the file system, you can launch the Caja as a super user. I think that's kind of cool. So, what else I want to mention? Updates. I think this is pretty much the standard Ubuntu update manager, software updater. It'll check for okay, so I don't have any settings and live patch, and that shows, you know, the standard Ubuntu software. I picked one closer to me. It usually starts off with server from the United States, but you can pick different ones if you do other. If you have your on a if you do a live USB and put it on a CD-ROM, you can actually use that as a source for some drivers. And some of those drivers, like the third-party drivers, exist on the CD-ROM. So if you can't get online, say with Broadcom, any other way, you can do this. Have it on a CD-ROM, and it'll look for it there. It'll find it there. Other software. Updates, how often you want the updates, and whether they're automatic or not. I leave my security updates automatic. Authentication, nothing to do here. Additional drivers. This is where if you have something like an NVIDIA card or Broadcom, that it will search to see if you need any additional drivers. I don't need any. And that's software and updates. It's very simple, very easy to use. It's one of the things that Ubuntu really gets right. There are others that are really good too, and I think others get it just as right, but I really like the way Ubuntu does that. It's pretty straightforward and easy to find. So, special, unique features. Well, these bars, these at the bottom top, taskbar showing what's running, workspace switcher. You know, so if you're the type of person that really wants to have different workspaces and you like to keep things separated that way, I do on sometimes, so you can easily jump between. Think of it, if you're familiar with GNOME and activities, you know, the little bar that comes over on the that left with the different screens. Same concept, except it's doing it at a bar here. No special or unique programs, just Ubuntu MATE really. You know, it basically uses all the same Ubuntus. So, my new user rating, 10 out of 10. It's easy to install. It's easy connecting to the internet. You saw that here. You just, believe it or not, they're all not that easy, but it's easy as all Ubuntus. The amount of after install tasks required, you know, I could take a point off for that and call it a 9, because there are a bunch that has to be done in comparison to whatever there's. But because Mate has made it so easy to do, I'm going to give it that 1. I'm going to give it that extra point. Very little CLI is required. Almost zero issues that I've had so far. It's easy for a Windows user to transition to this. Everything is going to look very similar with a drop-down menu and how to log off, how to log on. All that is going to looks very easy. Adding and removing programs, you saw how simple that is. Updating is very easy. It supports both UEFI and BIOS. And then the final point I give is size of support community. if you do have a problem, the Ubuntu support community is the largest and on a par with Linux Mint in terms of friendliness. Okay, contrast to Arch-based. Those guys aren't so friendly. You know, why didn't you read the 5,000 page manual before you posted a question? No, you're not going to get that in the Ubuntu sites, forums, or even the Ubuntu page on Facebook. You get a little of that, but it's got to be a pretty basic question like, how do I open the menu? Well, you probably should have figured that out. So I'll give this a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 if you want to be nitpicking about the things you have to do after an installation. But overall, this is at my top of recommendations for brand new users. And that's it. That's my review. Hope it wasn't